Hi guys, I'm Dr. Tara Tobias. I want to welcome you all back to my channel. In today's home exercise tutorial, we are going to do part 2 in a series that I started last week, addressing the issue of how to keep your legs straight when you're standing on it or when you're walking. So I went over a couple of reasons of why your leg might not stay straight or why it might actually flex up involuntarily when you go to put weight on it in last week's video. But just to review, a few reasons why that might happen is if you have spasticity, which is an involuntary movement pattern. So if you have a flexor synergy pattern, your leg will involuntarily flex up. So that's one reason when you go to stand on it, it'll actually flex up. The other thing I talked about is just not being able to generate enough power. So if you're in the early stages of recovery and you're in what we consider like the flaccid stage where the muscles just can't really generate any power yet, that would be another reason why you would need to focus on exercises in straightening the leg out, which is what I went over in last week's video. But I also thought of one other reason why this might happen that I've gone over in previous videos. And in some cases, some people cannot dissociate after a stroke. So whatever one leg does, the other leg is going to do the exact same thing. So that is the inability to dissociate the left side of the body from the right side of the body, and that does happen after a stroke in some cases. So what will happen when you go to step your uninvolved leg forward, obviously you need to flex it up, and if you cannot dissociate, then your involved leg will also flex up, which will make it feel like that leg is just giving out from underneath you or that your body is just collapsing. So those are the reasons why your leg might flex up and why you might benefit from the exercise progression that I went over last week, which is everything you need to know in how to keep the knee straight and how to rotate the leg in. So usually when the leg flexes up, it'll also rotate out. So we're trying to move out of that pattern, and that's what I went over in last week's video. So I highly recommend that you go back and watch that video. What I mentioned right at the end of the video though is that after any type of movement retraining, I like to follow that up with some form of functional activity that is purposeful and meaningful. And in this case, walking would be that activity to kind of drive the point home. If you're not to the point where you can walk yet, you can still do this progression because it's kind of a standing slash walking progression. So definitely you will find value in this video as well. And then before we get into that, if you haven't yet subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I upload new videos. And now let's go ahead and get started. So in last week's video, we went into the exercises and how to straighten the knee out and how to rotate it in. I also showed some exercises with a knee immobilizer on. I really like some type of a tool to block the knee in extension, especially when you're doing things to isolate the hip joint, because you're trying to break those up. And so a lot of times when you move the hip in certain directions, the knee is going to want to flex. So that's why I like that knee immobilizer. Now, the link that I put in the description, just to be clear, is not the one I use in the video. The one I use in the video is one that was custom made and it's pretty expensive, but I need something really rigid. And the link that I put in the video is the most durable one that I could find on Amazon that's reasonably priced. So that is the link that's in that video. I'll also put it in this video because we're going to use that again when we go to stand up. So as I just mentioned, the first step would be to work on standing with the knee immobilizer on. Obviously, it's not great for walking because you can't bend the knee in order to bring it through. The other downside of the knee immobilizer is once you get it on, going from sitting to standing is a little bit more difficult because you can only use one leg. So those are two downsides of it. But once you are in standing, the value that you get out of that sensation or that feeling of that knee staying completely locked out is worth all the effort in getting it on and getting into the standing position. Now, if you do have balance problems, I do not suggest that you do this on your own, but if you feel comfortable standing with this knee immobilizer on, one suggestion or recommendation that I could make is to try and have help putting it on, and then when you put it on, be sitting in a chair that's just a little bit higher. That'll help you be able to get to standing just using the one leg. So once you are in standing with the knee immobilizer on, the key things that we want to focus on is obviously feeling the sensation of keeping that knee straight. So if your knee is flexing up or trying to flex up in the knee immobilizer, you will feel your leg kind of bump into the straps on the front of it. So that would be a cue to you that your leg is actually flexing up inside the knee immobilizer, even if you can't see it. So you want to try keep your leg off those straps that are really close to the knee, or you don't want to feel like added pressure when you are in standing, because that means your knee is trying to flex and that the straps are just preventing that. And so then once you're in standing, you have the knee immobilizer on, you're going to slowly do a very similar progression that I've gone over many, many times. You're going to slowly just load that leg. So just shifting your weight over onto that leg, with the whole goal being trying to keep that leg straight or preventing that knee from bending. So you want to slowly load it, keep your uninvolved leg on the ground for this first little bit, so you're really not getting all of your weight on that leg, but you're getting a good percentage of it. Again, there's no downside to doing a lot of mini steps in your progression. The goal is that your brain is in learning mode, and you want to set yourself up for success, because whatever you practice is what the brain is recording and putting into that hard drive. So you don't want to make huge leaps if you're losing the quality in the process. So you're not picking the leg up yet, but you're just shifting your weight over and trying to keep that knee straight. Now, what you do want to focus on, since you do have the knee immobilizer on, and so you don't have to think as much about keeping the knee straight, the other thing that usually happens is the hip flexes. So what that's going to look like is your bottom or your hips are either going to pop out to the back, or they're going to pop out to the side on that side. So with the knee immobilizer on and the knee immobilizer doing a good job of keeping that knee straight, you can really focus on keeping that hip in and not allowing that hip to flex when you shift your weight over onto that leg. Now, once you get really good at that, you're honest with yourself and you can really tell that the knee is not trying to flex up in that knee immobilizer and that your hip is staying nice and tucked underneath your body. Now you can try and do like a little heel lift on the opposite leg. That'll just shift more weight or put more load onto that leg. So it's just a progression to challenge that leg a little bit more and see, can you keep that hip in and not feel your leg flex up in that knee immobilizer? And here's what that would look like. Now you can see when I do this with this particular patient who definitely has that problem of that leg flexing up and that hip popping out, is I'm trying to set him up for success. So I am helping him to keep that hip in so that he can really feel that. Eventually I will back off of those cues, but I'm not going to let him do it on his own until I know that he can keep that hip in. And usually after we've done this a few times and he feels it a few times, he can keep the hip in, and then we will progress to I will back off some of my cueing. So then the next progression would be to take a small step forward with one leg, and so now your feet are staggered. This is a critical step in the walking cycle where your still standing on the involved leg, but the other leg is actually in front. So because it is a stage in the walking cycle, I always like to practice this in a static position before you get into walking to really feel how to keep that leg straight with your legs in one position. That does happen in the walking cycle. And then to advance this or challenge yourself just a little bit more, you would just move that foot either further forward or even into a straight line. So we call that tandem standing, but you can actually put the uninvolved leg directly in front of the involved leg and try and maintain that position. Because there's a lot of weight on the right leg, just because your body is more positioned over that leg, there is going to be more of a tendency for the knee to flex up. So I always recommend start in a static position and just hold it. And I know I'm going to get this question, so I'm just going to clear the air. How long should you hold it? How long does a professional basketball player practice or a pro tennis player practice? This is no different. They are in learning mode. They are trying to perfect a swing or perfect a shot, and there is no magic number. I was thinking about this a lot recently because I do get this question a ton, is how long should I practice? I never have an answer for that question, but I don't really have a good reason why, and I think I've come up with the reason why. You will put in the amount of time that is necessary to learn a skill based on how badly you want to learn that skill. So I hope that gives you a different outlook on repetitions and numbers and things like that, is that you are not strengthening a muscle, and I've talked about this before, but you are learning. And so how long does it take the brain to learn a skill or learn a movement? There is no magic number. Again, the more you want it, the more time you'll devote to it, the more progress you're going to make. So with each of these steps, how badly do you want this to be perfect? No shame in saying you don't want to have perfect movement. I talked about this in the last video. I just had this conversation with a patient. There is a time and a place where you do have to think about being independent. And so you might not focus on each step because you're not so concerned about the quality as much as you are about just becoming independent. Totally okay. Then the quality isn't as important to you. You would just do it until you felt safe on that leg and you didn't feel like that leg was gonna buckle out from underneath you, and then you would move on. So I hope that made sense. But the next step that I usually do is now getting into a little bit more of a dynamic movement. So now you're not holding it, but you need to learn how to coordinate that hip and knee extension when you're actually taking a step. And again, this is just one more progression towards actual walking. You've seen this in other videos, but sometimes I like to put a yoga block in between the feet and actually do like little toe taps with the uninvolved leg onto the yoga block. I love that activity. A yoga block's not super stable, so if you're not shifted all the way over that leg, it's pretty easy for you to recognize this, because most likely what I've seen is that you'll tip the yoga block over, and if that's happening, that means that you haven't really loaded the involved leg. So either your brain is going into safety mode and saying, I don't want all the weight on this leg because it's gonna buckle, and then you would go back to working on standing, trying to keep it straight. Or, I've talked about this in other videos as well, your midline orientation, or where your brain thinks the middle is a little bit skewed. So you might think you're centered over that leg and you're really not. One of those two things will emerge with this yoga block activity, because again, your foot's either gonna fall off the yoga block or you're gonna tip the yoga block over. So that is it. I hope you all enjoyed this two-part series on how to keep your knee straight. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. It is the only place that you will get an answer to your question or your problem at this time. I don't really have any other way set up for you to get those answers, so definitely leave them in the comments. Also, if you're willing to share your story, share what you've got going on, because again, that's where I get the majority of my ideas for future videos. And with that being said, I got a great idea for the next series, which is going to be on how to keep the elbow straight. I've actually gotten this in a lot of comments recently, so look forward to that. How to straighten the arm out, and then great activities to do to relearn how to keep the arm straight or prevent it from drying up when you're standing and you're walking. So look out for that. That'll be next week. If you haven't yet subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell so that you'll be notified when I upload new videos. I upload videos every week to help you navigate the healthcare system, work with your physical therapist, and really empower you to make the best decisions for you in your recovery. So if you haven't yet subscribed, definitely go ahead and subscribe. I want to thank each and every one of you. I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for all the positive feedback I get. I know there's a lot of negativity on social media and on a lot of these platforms, and I can honestly say I'm truly blessed. You guys are very encouraging and supportive, and when you do leave feedback, you leave excellent feedback on ways for me to make these videos better. So I truly appreciate all of you, and as usual, stay focused on today, have your big goals in mind, but stay focused on each day and just work on getting 1% better each day. And over time, you'll be amazed to see how much progress you are actually making. So keep going. It is going to pay off. And that is it. I enjoyed spending time with all of you today. And until next time, you all have a great day.